Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an international edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an International Women's Day celebration episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Today we speak with the authors of She Spoke, 14 women who raised their voices and changed the world, Kathy MacMillan and Manuela Bernardi. Before Kathy and Manuela join us, I would love to join you and the kids in your community to share my educational and inspirational magic shows. I've had the honor of using magic, storytelling, illusions, and comedy to inspire kids to make healthy choices for their lives, to love themselves, to be respectful of everybody they meet, to work together to build safe and caring bully-free schools, and of course, to read. I would love to bring all of this fun and all of this inspiration to your community. Now you can find out about our educational magic shows in two places. Of course, you can go to readingwithyourkids.com/live, readingwithyourkids.com/live. You can also go to my website, jedlie.com, Jedlie, jedlie.com. I'm so excited. I love this. Through the magic of technology, we're talking to two hemispheres tonight. We have on here to celebrate International Women's Day, we have on the authors of She Spoke, 14 women who raised their voices and changed the world. Please welcome from Baltimore, Maryland, our friend Kathy MacMillan, and from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, Manuela Bernardi. Manuela, Kathy, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Hi, it's great to talk to you.
Now, Manuela, before we go any further and before you raise your voice and get mad at me, I know I didn't pronounce your name with the proper flavor and flair, so tell everybody the proper way to pronounce Manuela Bernardi.
No, that's totally fine. We would say here in Rio, we would say Manuela Bernardi, but that's not, it's fine.
Okay. Kathy probably remembers that we host international students here in our home, and we have this wonderful young woman with us from Italy, and I'd spoken to her parents, and she lived with us for a couple of months, and I introduced her to a friend, and I pronounced her last name because I never had to use her last name, but in introducing her, I pronounced her last name the way it looks in English, and boy, did I do it wrong. So hopefully we won't make that mistake and mispronounce any of the 14 courageous women that you and Kathy spoke about. First off, can you tell us how you two connected, Manuela? How did you connect with Kathy to write this book?
Oh God, we actually connected 15 years ago. How long was it, Kathy?
Something like that.
Yeah, I was a Harry Potter fan, and I was a teenager. I was in the American fandom because the book had come out in English but not in Portuguese yet, and I was obsessed.
Uh-huh.
So I started writing fan fiction, and I posted it to this website that offered beta reading services. And then Kathy was randomly assigned to be my beta reader, and we, fell in writerly love.
I love that. I love that. Fell in writerly love. That's beautiful. So Kathy, after you and Manuela fell in writerly love 15 years ago, what was it that inspired you to write this book about these 14 courageous women?
Well, when that happened, when we were paired on that fan fiction website, we actually started writing some stories together via email, via instant message, and so forth. And then kind of life happened. Manuela went off to college. I went off and had a baby, got married and then had a baby. And then, was working on my job and working on original stuff. And, when I was in the process of revising my debut novel, which Sword and Verse, Manuela randomly found me on Facebook. I was in the middle of a really terrible revision, and she kind of showed up out of the blue and was like, "What you working on?" And so she ended up actually becoming my critique partner and saving that book. and has been an integral part of everything I've written since. In fact, my second novel, Dagger and Coin, is dedicated to Manuela. She is the fairy godmother to all my characters.
I love that.
So when last year, David Miles of Familius Press had the idea to do this book that was going to be a nonfiction picture book featuring women who spoke up, and it would actually have an audio panel embedded into the book. So you would be able to press a button and hear these speeches. And he wanted me to work on it. And it was a really quick turnaround book. The reason they approached me is because I have a librarian background and they needed somebody with a strong research background. But I knew I couldn't do it alone. So I knew exactly who I wanted to pitch as my co-author. And, one email later, they were totally on board. All I had to do was explain who Manuela was and say what she had done. And they were really excited to have her as part of the project. So I got to write a really awesome book about strong women with my best friend.
Awesome. Two strong women coming together to write about strong women. Now, as I'm looking at this list of 14 courageous women, there are many names that I recognize. Dr. Maya Angelou, Hillary Rodham Clinton, Sonia Sotomayor, Malala. You're going to have to pronounce your last name for me, but
Yousafzai.
Okay, say it again because I think I spoke over. Is Malala?
Yousafzai.
Yousafzai. And I wanted to speak about her because I'm fascinated with her. But there's some names here that I don't recognize at all, and I guess that's part of the reason for the book. I think the best way to do this is just to ask you both if there's individually if there's one name that kind of stands out to you the most, that you had the most fun writing about for whatever reason. Why don't we start with you, Kathy? Is there one of those 14 women that you found especially inspiring or that you really connected with?
Can I say two? It's
Sure.
so hard to narrow it down to one. Okay.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting that you made the comment that some of them you have heard of and some of them you haven't. That was actually something we really tried to do when we were trying to narrow down the women that we chose. We wanted to make sure there were certain people like Malala. Malala was always going to be on the list because She Spoke is pretty much her life story, right? But there were other people who people hadn't heard of and should have. Susan Schoen Harjo, who is a passionate advocate for Native rights in this country, she has an amazing life story. She's done so many wonderful things. She was an advisor for Congress. She was the founding director of the Smithsonian Museum of the American Indian. I hope I got the name right there. And she led the lawsuit against the Washington football team to change its racist name. She's done so much and has spoken up with so much, and yet so many people don't really know anything about her. And then the other person that really inspired me was Lima Bowie, who is a Liberian activist who was a winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, who not single-handedly, but was a great force in stopping the Liberian Civil War by bringing women of different faiths together to pray as a form of nonviolent protest. And what she was able to do and what she was able to harness and bring out in other women was really amazing and inspiring.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting? All around the world, it seems that there are instances of women coming together in prayer, in solidarity, and women of different faiths or tribes or beliefs or groups coming together to bring peace. And it happened in this situation, happened in Northern Ireland. There's been mothers' marches here in Boston to end street violence. So that's a beautiful, beautiful story. Manuela, what about you? What one or two or three of these women really kind of inspired you?
Well, I have to say, I've loved all the women in the book. Every single one of them. The more we knew about them, the more inspiring they got. But I have a special place in my heart. I'm not sure if I'm going to say her name right. Shirley Chisholm. Yeah. Because I had never heard of her, but because of the process of research, we had to find audio clips that we could use and that we could get permission to use. And we had to give a preview of which women we would use. And we had her audio before I knew who she was. and we said we would do her. And then I was like, but we have so many interesting women, and we had already said we would do her. And then I started researching her life, and she is amazing. She's so amazing. She was the first woman to run for president, and she was a black woman in the 60s, and she knew she wouldn't win. She knew she had no chance, but she went to the Democratic Convention, and she got 10% of the votes just because she knew someone had to do it first. And she did so many amazing things. There's a photo of her with like 10 white dudes, and she's so tiny in the middle of the Democratic Convention, and she looks so fierce. And when people used to tell her to tell them how she would like to be remembered, she used to say that, I like them to say that Shirley Chisholm had guts.
Yeah.
And I loved her.
Yeah.
I just love her.
She certainly did have guts, and that is one of the women that I recognized. And I know you can't tell from this beautiful, youthful face, but I was alive when she was running for president. I wasn't old enough to vote, but I do have very strong memories of that. And it was an amazing time, because it was, as a kid, I was 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever it was, but you know, I remember being aware, and I remember there was hope. You know, Dr. Martin Luther King was speaking up, and Shirley Chisholm was running for president, and but there was also a lot of violence. So there was this combination of hope and fear, and but my family was always. We tend to look at the glasses half full all the time. So we always held out hope, and we always, knew that things would get better, and they still have an awful long way to go. But things have changed and have gotten better. Kathy, what do you want girls, young girls who are reading this book, what do you want girls to get out of She Spoke?
Well, first, let me say, I hope that it's not just girls reading this book, because I think
you're stepping on my next question, but that's okay.
Okay. Because all of the women in here are fierce role models for girls and boys alike, and adults too. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that Manuela and I have talked about in the process of writing this book is we were both inspired as women to kind of find the value in our own voices more, and that was a pattern that kind of went throughout the book in every case. Because these were women who were growing up in various times as women, they often had fewer opportunities, fewer resources because of that. And they had to find the value in their own voices, even though they were being told it didn't have value. Another thing that was a big pattern was that behind each of these women, let me say that again. Behind each of these women, there were other women supporting them that helped them get where they were. For example, Dr. Jane Goodall, when she was a young woman and she was offered the opportunity to go study chimpanzees in Tanzania, the government wouldn't let her on the reserve alone because she was a young woman. They wouldn't let her unchaperoned. So her mother went with her. That's amazing to me that her mother said, yes, I will go and live in Tanzania with you so that you can make this opportunity happen. So Jane Goodall is pretty fierce, but her mother was also pretty fierce. And in every case, you saw that there were other women kind of lifting up these women and allowing them to get where they were, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. And did you, in your research, did you also find that there were other men that were also helping support these women, you know, achieve what they did?
Absolutely. The biggest example that I can think of the top of my head is Malala's father, who educated her, taught her the value of education. Also, Jane Goodall had her professor who...
Dr. Louis Leakey.
Yes. Kathy is the researcher, as you can see. She's an amazing librarian. I'm the flighty one. But I feel like it's important for men and for women to see how it's a cliche, but when we are together and we prop each other up, even the man stands to gain so much. And there's so many amazing men who can see that. It's even Tammy Duckworth. She was in the middle of so many men who respected her and who lifted her up in the army.
So tell us a little bit about Tammy. That's one of the names that I didn't recognize.
She's amazing.
Do I talk? Okay. So Tammy Duckworth is a senator, and she was in the army. She lost both legs, when her,
the helicopter
that she was piloting was under fire. She managed to get the helicopter to safety, even while she was passing
without her legs. Yeah.
And, her team managed to get her to safety. So she is, a senator now, and she's, in a wheelchair, and, or sometimes she's got prosthetics, so sometimes she's on crutches. But she always talks about how her experiences in the military led her to the understanding of you've got to walk the talk, and you've got to always be able to trust your team.
Wow, incredible! And what an incredible feat, because piloting a helicopter, it takes your hands, it takes your mind, it also takes your legs. There's a lot happening there, and that's incredible. Now, one of the things, Manuela, I said that Kathy was kind of stepping on one of my future questions, and that's okay. Me and Kathy are friends. But Manuela, what do you hope that the young men, the boys that are reading this book, take away from this book?
To listen to women and also to trust their own voice too, because even I know so many men who don't think they have anything valuable to say, or that their point of view is not original enough or not important enough, or that they're not respected enough yet. And respect is something that you can cave for yourself, you can carve out for yourself. And I feel like you can do that for others too. And listen and let them speak and prop them up.
Yeah.
And prop yourself up in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a great point, that when we're learning about others, it's not so much to learn and kind of do hero worship. It's to recognize their accomplishments and then find a way to kind of emulate them and to grow from their example.
Exactly. And find your own way of doing that by seeing how each of these women got to where they got in different ways. So they all found their own path with help and with support, but different kinds of help, different kinds of support, and different paths and different
plenty
messages.
of determination as well.
Yes, so much.
I think it's worth noting that it very often the narrative when women succeed is that they often talk about those who got them where they were and those who supported them. And we, of course, talked about that as well. And very often when men succeed, they're expected to talk about how they worked so hard and all that. When, in fact, we all rely on support from other people. We all come into any situation with certain resources, and we all get where we get because of our own grit and determination. It's true. But women tend, if they don't acknowledge the support and all of that, to be looked at differently than men do if they don't look at that.
Absolutely. And women have been supporting men forever without any acknowledgement.
You are preaching to the choir right here, because everything that's been happening in my life and with this podcast, with my educational magic shows, wouldn't have happened without the support of my wife. She is my rock and she's my inspiration, and she's my critic when I need to hear that too. And I am so happy to have her in my life, and I'm so happy that that my son and my daughter are both, they're strong, confident young people that I think help each other and support each other.
That is amazing.
Now, Manuela, you spoke of Malala, and that is a person that I find great inspiration from. And talk a little bit more about her, because I think that's a name that a lot of us recognize. She's young. She's, her accomplishments are fairly recent, but so incredibly brave.
So incredibly brave. She started speaking out for girls' education when she was 9, was it, Kathy?
11.
And then the Taliban started to threaten her and tell her to stop. And she didn't let that faze her. She just kept speaking up. Mm-hmm. And then she got shot in the head and kept speaking up. Mm-hmm. And she cannot go back to her home country, which is Pakistan, right?
Mm-hmm. I believe she actually has gone back to Pakistan since. I believe I read that recently. But it was pretty recent that happened.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, talk about bravery. Just returning home, even with all the notoriety and security that she must have had, that's still incredibly brave to go back to the place where she was, where people try to murder her.
She's amazing. And she's still speaking up, and she's still, she has a foundation, mm-hmm. and she just keeps doing the work. She came to Brazil recently, and she's awesome.
Amazing. That's wonderful, wonderful. How has, Manuela, and I'm going to ask Kathy the same question, how has writing this book changed you?
Oh, God. I used to tell Kathy a lot how I needed this book because I'm in the place in my life where I need to just defend my ground in a way, as an artist, as a screenwriter. I'm a screenwriter, and just stand up for myself and just know that my voice has value and what I have to say has value. And I was struggling with that when Kathy came to me and invited me to write this book with her. And I actually cried many times writing this book and editing this book, because it's so inspiring to see how these women just knew they had to do something, mm-hmm. and they had a sense of not only duty, but also value in themselves, and how because women, we're taught to think that if we speak up and we think we have value, we're being selfish. Mm-hmm. But what these women did was incredibly selfless. Mm-hmm. That, you can have value and respect yourself, and that is the most selfless thing you can do, because the world needs you. Mm-hmm. The world needs us. Mm-hmm. You were speaking about how women can change the world and stop conflict mm-hmm. with peace. Mm-hmm. And we have this amazing power that we're not using because we're told that's selfish, when that's actually we could save so many people. Mm-hmm. I don't know, it's mind-boggling to me.
Well, it's certainly, Manuela and I are looking at each other, and I apologize, you have to look at me, Manuela, but I can see in your eyes and as you speak, there's so much passion, and that this has certainly been such a heartfelt experience for you. And the same is true with you, Kathy, as I'm looking at you and listening to you. How did the process of writing this book change you?
Well, I think in similar ways. I've been in a place in my life where I have been encouraged not to speak up, not to speak my mind. And there was a pretty terrible situation that I really had to speak up about and mm-hmm. put an end to. And as I was working on this book, that situation mm-hmm. was working itself out. Mm-hmm. So it really had a pretty immediate impact in that way, reading about these women who endured such threats against them speaking up. Mm-hmm. And so it's, if Malala can handle coming back from being shot, mm-hmm. then I can handle somebody speaking nastily to me, Mm-hmm. And as an artist, it is difficult because whenever you are writing about something that some people are not going to like, and frankly, some people are not going to like this book just because it's about women speaking up. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, it's terrible, but some people are not going to even look at what the book's about. They're going to see who's in it and make judgments about it. And that's just part of, social media culture and all that. But you can't let that stuff stop you. Mm-hmm. And, as Manuela was saying, it is selfless to speak up in a way, because you are giving the world your voice. And even though it might seem it might seem that you're being kind of big-headed to say that my voice has value, every voice has value, and we know that. And we can all contribute something. The other piece that I don't know that it changed me, but it just kind of reiterated something I already knew, is that getting the chance to work on this book with Manuela was amazing. As I said, she's been my critique partner for many years. So we've worked together on a lot of projects, but it's usually been either her project or my project, mm-hmm. and we're helping each other with it, and we get very invested in each other's work. But being able to work on this together was incredible. And we divided up the writing, but then all the editing we did together live. Mm-hmm. Over Skype and over Google, over Skype and over Google Docs, and we, worked it out together. And it's been amazing to me every time how, when we would sit down and start working on one of these profiles, I would think, oh, there's no way we can fix this. There's no way we can make this better. There's no way we can get it down to the number of words we need to get it down to. And somehow it would happen every time. And it's just such a great editorial relationship too, because we've been working together for so long that we really trust each other, and we don't pull any punches with each other. I don't know what Manuela thinks, but she's a tough editor, man. And she does not soften the blows sometimes. And that's okay, because I don't want her to.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I don't want you to.
I should not say sorry. No,
that's right. Don't say sorry. We don't apologize.
You're welcome.
The strongest thing in the world is a woman who does not explain herself.
Yeah.
You're welcome. That's what you say. But I always knew that even when she was being critical, it was coming from a place of love. And I think she knew when I was being critical, it was coming from that too. And it's always, I know that you can do this better. Mm-hmm. And I believe in you. Mm-hmm. So when you have that kind of mutual trust, it totally changes that editorial relationship and allows you to get to places you would not be able to get otherwise.
Yeah. And one of the things, and you know, Kathy, because you've been on the show a couple of times, one of the things I like to ask authors is, what can families talk about while they're reading your book? And I'm not going to do that here, because there's so many things. I mean, talk about courage, talk about grit, talk about respect, standing up to bullies, standing up for others. But I
would like to mention that in each profile, there are some discussion questions. So that's a perfect way to lead into those discussions.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And I love that our friends over Familius took this on and published this, because they are very, very creative. And you mentioned the soundboard that is featured in the book, and they're always come up with really cool ideas and cool ways to use technology to incorporate into, the traditional book to make the experience fuller and richer for the reader.
Absolutely. And the design of this project is really amazing. The illustrations by Catherine Onesta are just gorgeous. Yeah. And each of the profiles is really built around the sound clip. Mm-hmm. So we really did start with researching the clips. And can I just say, the process of getting it down to the 14 that are in the book was so hard, because there's so many wonderful women that have said so many wonderful things, and there were so many wonderful clips that we found. But we really did want to keep the theme centered around women who spoke up, mm-hmm. and what they spoke up about. Mm-hmm. So it's really wonderful that you can just press the button and hear their voices as they are. Some go back to the 1950s. We have some older ones in there and some more recent ones as well. And it's really wonderful to be able to hear the passion in their mm-hmm. words. You can read it too, obviously, but it just brings a whole nother element to it when you can hear it.
Yeah. Manuela, do you feel that way too, that when you hear the word, it is, you can read the passion on the page, but it's just a different experience when you're hearing the original speaker speak the words?
Absolutely. It's just so powerful. Mm-hmm. I feel to just have these women talk about themselves in their own words. They're not talking about themselves. They're talking about what's important to mm-hmm. them, but to have their voices be heard, be like you can hold and carry their voices with you. That's what's really powerful. I mean, Kathy and I did a pretty cool job. And the bios are great, but and we worked really hard on them. But the audio clips and the illustrations are what's really amazing about this project.
Yeah. To
have like these women speak up and to have the chance to hear them, it's everything. I don't know how it wasn't done before.
Yeah. One of the things I really love about the audio clips is that it kind of broadens the audience for this book. It's written for ages 8 to 12, but because of the audio, it will appeal to kids who are younger than that. And I think it will have a lot of appeal for adults too. I think this would be a great gift for, a grandmother or, for any adult who would be interested in this kind of history because of that audio piece. It's something so different.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there are a couple of questions I want to ask before we go. I think the first one that a lot of people might be thinking right now, okay, like you fell in writerly love like 15 years ago and you're in different hemispheres. Have you guys ever met like in the real physical world?
We met for the first time in 2013, which was more than 10 years after we met in over the internet. We met in person because I went to the US for 2 years for a writing MFA. And then I got to see Kathy and we got to hang out. She was in Baltimore and I was in California, but she visited me and I visited her. I went for her book launch and Southern Verse came out and it was amazing and I stayed with her and I saw blizzards. Yes, I got stuck in that huge blizzard in 2016 when I had never seen snowfall before in my life. And Kathy was like, come play in the snow. And I was like, no, what are you doing?
And when her flight back to Rio was delayed, she just couldn't understand it. She was like, but I have to be at work on Monday. I was like, well, the flight's not going out.
It might be able to go through the sky, but it doesn't go through the snow.
No.
I do. I remember that. I remember that blizzard very well here in Boston. We had 110 inches of snow. And we had a young woman from Zhejiang, China, living with us at the time. And when the last snow fell, I happened to be on the road and I called home and I asked Sophia, I said, could you go up and help Mom shovel? And she said, absolutely, of course. And she went upstairs in slippers and with the sweater. And my wife, she picked up a shovel and she said, how do I use this? And we said, admirable try, Sophie. Well, I have to ask before we go, what's next? Does the team of Kathy and Manuela have another project they're working on together? And what projects are you working on separately? Why don't you start, Kathy?
Well, we've talked about some other books in this series that would not necessarily have the audio piece to it, but would be built around different themes. For example, She Wrote with maybe some manuscript excerpts from their actual handwriting, or She Discovered, Scientists. We haven't quite solidified where we're going next with it, but we have a lot more ideas for, some great books about strong women. For me personally, I've got the next book in the Little Hand Signing series. It comes out in the fall from Familius. That is Nita's Day. And then I've got a couple other picture books on the way from Familius as well.
Awesome. And Manuela, what's next for you?
I am waiting for us to have the chance to keep going with this series because I feel like we need it. I feel like now I need to have inspiring women in my life in order to fuel my career. But as for myself, I'm a screenwriter here in Brazil. Right now I'm writing a feature film in Portuguese, which is about a woman who finds out that the villain in the primetime soap opera in Brazil is based on her. So she's like this really prim and proper mom. And she sees like this really over the top, sexy, vampy villain in the soap opera, and it turns her world upside down. And I'm writing a TV show that I'm in the process of trying to sell.
Wonderful.
Let's see. Cross your fingers.
Yeah. Well, Manuela, do you have a website where people can connect with you and find out more about you, whether it's in English or Portuguese?
I do not. I'm such a hermit. I have a Twitter account, but I do not use it. If you go on my Twitter account, you will see that I only promoted Kathy's book. That's all I did. I'm not that comfortable with speaking up yet, but I'll get there.
Is working on it. But you can find out more about Manuela at the She Spoke website, which can be found at tinyurl.com/She Spoke.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Go there.
Well, I couldn't think of a better way to celebrate International Women's Day than to speak with these two inspiring women, my friend Kathy MacMillan and my new friend Manuela Bernardi, or she pronounces it much more beautiful than I.
That sounds great.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing your screenplay after it's a big, huge box office hit down in Brazil, to have it come to Netflix with subtitles so I can enjoy it. And we look forward to the sequel to She Spoke. In the meantime, make sure you check out She Spoke, 14 Women Who Raised Their Voices and Changed the World. Manuela Bernardi and Kathy MacMillan, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Jed.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We welcome back Daniel Warlock. Daniel Warlock, one of the most popular episodes that we've had was our interview with Daniel Warlock. He is back because he has a new addition to his Holly Kiss Kiss series. Book 4 is now available, and he'll be telling us all about it on the next edition of the show. Hey, if you're the author of a great children's book, we would love to have you as a guest on the show. Being a guest, it's fun, it's easy, it gives you the chance to tell the world about your fantastic book. Now, all you need to do is to go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, click on the contact button, let us know about your great book. We'll let you know about the next easy steps. We want to give a big thank you to Kathy MacMillan for being here today. We want to give a big thank you to Manuela Bernardi for being here today. And Manuela, thank you so much for understanding how I mangle your last name and don't say it with the proper beauty and accent that you use. And I also want to thank all of you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And as always, thank you so very, very much for making the world a better place by always choosing to read with your kids. I'll be looking for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.